The 10,000-hour rule is a lie. Most people think logging the hours is a guaranteed path to world-class skill, but that's a dangerous oversimplification. The debate over what it truly takes to achieve mastery is far more complex and brutal than a single number suggests. Smart people disagree fiercely on the ingredients, and the consequences of getting the formula wrong can cost you a decade of your life. Where do you stand? By the end of this, you might change your mind. Let's start with the version you know, the one that sold millions of books. It's a beautifully simple idea. 10,000 hours is the magic number for greatness. The Beatles in Hamburg, playing for 8 hours a night, Bill Gates getting his hands on a university computer terminal in 1968. The argument is that genius is made through sheer volume of work. It's an incredibly appealing story. It suggests that mastery is democratic. It implies that with enough grit and time, anyone can get there. It flattens the world into a fair competition where the hardest worker wins. This narrative gives you a clear target and a sense of control over your destiny. If you fail, you just haven't put in your hours. If you succeed, you earned it. It's a powerful, motivating framework. But is it true? That sounds convincing. It's a story we want to believe, but there's a problem. If raw hours were the only variable, the world would be filled with experts. Your uncle, who has played golf every Saturday for 30 years, should be on the PGA Tour. The amateur painter who has filled canvases for decades should have a gallery show. They have the hours, they lack the results. Something is missing from the equation. The original research, conducted by psychologist Anders Ericsson, was far more specific and much less comfortable. He studied expert performers, violinists, chess grandmasters, athletes, and found a very particular kind of activity they all shared. He called it deliberate practice, and it has almost nothing in common with just putting in the time. Deliberate practice is systematic, purposeful, and requires intense concentration. It's the opposite of mindlessly going through the motions. First, it demands you break a skill down into its smallest possible components and set a highly specific goal. You're a programmer. You don't just code for 4 hours. You decide to reduce the latency of a single database query from 80 milliseconds to under 50. You define the target. You isolate the variable. You ignore everything else. For a musician, this means practicing a single difficult bar of music over and over at half speed with a metronome until the fingering is flawless. It's microscopic in its focus. Most people practice to perform. Experts practice to fix a specific tiny weakness. That laser focus, however, is useless without the second ingredient: immediate, high-quality feedback. You have to know right now whether you succeeded or failed. And if you failed, you need to know exactly why. For a chess player, the feedback is instant. The computer shows a better move. For an athlete, a coach is watching, correcting their form in real time. Your elbow dropped by 2 inches on that shot. That's the feedback loop. Without it, you are likely just reinforcing your own errors. You're carving the wrong habits deeper into your brain. This is why practicing alone is often so inefficient. You become blind to your own mistakes. The feedback mechanism can be a person, a tool, or a system, but it must be ruthless and immediate. It's the mirror that shows you the flaw you can't see on your own. Most people avoid this kind of feedback. It's uncomfortable. It feels like judgment, and that leads to the third most brutal part of the process. Deliberate practice is defined by struggle. It must always take place at the very edge of your current abilities. If you are comfortable, you are wasting your time. It should feel like trying to lift a weight that is just slightly too heavy for you. The effort is immense. It is mentally and physically draining. This is why Ericsson's research found that even the world's top performers could only sustain true deliberate practice for about 4 to 5 hours per day in focused bursts of 60 to 90 minutes. The idea of grinding for 10 or 12 hours straight is a fantasy. That's just exhaustion. True practice demands your full cognitive resources, pushing your brain and body into a state of adaptation. You are constantly failing, adjusting, and trying again. It's a state of permanent, productive discomfort. This is the part the popular myth conveniently forgets. It promises a reward for effort, but it hides the profound psychological cost of that effort. And that leads to the final piece: repetition with refinement. You take that tiny specific goal, you attempt it, you get instant feedback. You feel the strain of operating at your limit, and then you do it again. But you don't just repeat, You refine. Based on the feedback, you make a micro adjustment. Okay, this time I'll keep my wrist straight. You run the loop. Again and again. The process is a slow, iterative climb. Each loop is a tiny victory, a small expansion of your capability. This is where skill is actually built. It's the process of targeting a weakness, failing, analyzing the failure, and methodically eliminating it. It is a slow, grinding, and deeply unglamorous process. It's the real work. And yet, the other side has its own blind spot. The deliberate practice model is incredibly powerful, but it's still incomplete. Newer research has complicated the picture significantly. In some studies, deliberate practice accounts for a huge chunk of the difference between amateurs and experts. In others, it's a surprisingly small piece of the puzzle. What else is at play? The most uncomfortable answer is genetics. For certain athletic pursuits, having a high VO2 max, your body's ability to use oxygen, provides a massive inherited advantage. No amount of practice can give someone with average lung capacity the engine of a Tour de France winner. The same goes for cognitive traits. A person with a higher innate working memory might learn a complex new programming language faster because they can hold more of the syntax in their head at once. Deliberate practice is the vehicle, but some people start with a much bigger engine. The logic breaks down the moment you apply it to certain domains. Erickson's model works perfectly for what are called kind learning environments. Chess, classical music, and golf are perfect examples. The rules are fixed, the patterns repeat, and feedback is rapid and clear. But what about wicked environments? Think of being a startup founder, a politician, or a general in a war. The rules are constantly changing. The feedback is delayed, ambiguous, or just plain wrong. The key variables are unknown. How do you deliberately practice making a billion-dollar decision when you only get to do it once, and you won't know if it was right for 10 years? In these fields, adaptability, judgment, and the ability to learn from unclear signals seem to matter more than the structured repetition of a single skill. The 10,000-hour model was built on a world of stable rules. Most of modern life is a world of constant flux. Even within those kind domains, there's another critical factor: learning rate. Two violinists can put in the same 500 hours of deliberate practice. One might improve dramatically, while the other only makes modest gains. Why? The difference often lies in their ability to learn from the feedback. How quickly do they understand the coach's correction? How effectively can they translate that abstract advice into a physical movement? This is tied to general cognitive ability. A smarter learner simply gets more value out of each hour of practice. The hours become an outcome of their talent, rather than an input that creates it. They reach 10,000 hours of effective practice faster because their brain is more efficient at building the skill. This demolishes the democratic promise of the original myth. If your learning rate is a multiplier on your effort, then effort alone is never going to be enough to close the gap. We've dismantled the simple myth and replaced it with a much messier reality. The path to mastery is narrow and brutal. It requires not just time, but time spent in a state of high focus, high feedback, high discomfort practice. And even that may only get you as far as your innate talents and the nature of your chosen field will allow. The core tension is between what we can control and what we can't. The simple myth gave us the illusion of total control. The complex reality forces us to confront our limits. It shifts the goal from a guaranteed outcome to an optimized process. You can't guarantee you'll become a grandmaster. You can guarantee that you are using the most efficient method known to improve at chess. The result is out of your hands. The quality of your effort is not. This forces a fundamental question about why we pursue skills in the first place. The myth of 10,000 hours sells a destination. The reality of deliberate practice describes a grueling journey that might not even get you there. If you love playing the guitar with your friends, should you sacrifice that joy for the painful, isolating work of deliberate practice just to become technically better? Is the goal to be the best, or is the goal to enjoy the process? So, where do you draw the line? Is the pursuit of excellence worth the sacrifice of enjoyment and the confrontation with your own limitations? Or is there more wisdom in accepting good enough and finding joy in the imperfect, lifelong journey of just playing?